You're good.
All right, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Averill Park Central School District Board of Education meeting on January 11th, 2021 via Zoom. So welcome and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we will jump right into our item number 2. Oh, that's right. We have to approve the appointment of Lauren Paris and Danielle LaPierre as student ex officio board members for the remainder of this school year. Were they able to join? I know, Jimmy, I think you said one of them was going to join tonight.
I thought so. Lauren was supposed to.
Okay.
I know, Linda, she was on the invite, correct?
Yes. Yes, she was.
Yeah, I thought so. Not sure, maybe something happened, but yeah, Lauren was supposed to. They're going to alternate. So Lauren the first time and Danielle the second time. Okay.
Well, if she joins in, we will take a moment and swear her in, but I think we do we need to have a motion to approve them? Okay. So I think I need a motion to approve the appointment of the 2 students.
I'll make a motion.
Peter, and seconded by Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Any discussion? Hearing none.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think it's great that we have student interaction with the board. I really loved this in my first 2 year and a half or so that we had that student point of view. So I'm really excited that we're gonna have students joining us again.
Excellent. Me too. All right. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think it passed unanimously. Okay, and if Lauren does end up joining in a little bit, we'll take that minute to swear her in. Okay, on to item number 3, the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Good evening, everyone. The report is in front of you. I shared the screen. Hopefully you can see it. As we talked about, we wanted to welcome our newest board members, Lauren and Danielle. They're going to be ex officio members and stay with us for the rest of the school year. And just like last year's representatives, they are going to alternate their meetings. And putting the board notes, just want to make sure it was clear. The 4,000 policy series is quite extensive, as you probably have gathered. So what we're trying to do is make it as efficient and productive as possible. So we're going to meet with the folks who are closely involved in some of these policies. They're very specific. Camille, who's actually on the call tonight, obviously. We'll take a look at the special ed policies. We asked Heath to join us. That section there really deals with like class rank and some graduation ceremony information, just a lot in there. So we thought we'd break them down. I think it's important to note that by the word session 1, we don't mean one night. I don't think we're going to get through all those in one night. So just that first grouping will be those policies there. And then once we get through all those, we'll have a separate session. Again, maybe end up being more than one. We'll schedule that, and hopefully Camille can join us to go through the special education policies, and then a third kind of grouping. But we thought we'd try and kind of chunk them a little bit so that the board could kind of focus on specific areas, and we'd have the administrators, again, with their expertise available for those meetings. And again, we'll review those with folks so that we kind of come to you with some of those blanks filled in already, and hopefully make that go a little more smooth. we also are going to be sending you some more policies as we've gone through these a little bit. We do have some policies currently that you that the district has adopted that are not part of the NYSBA table of contents. So we're going to interject those, copy those, and have them for you so we can interject those within the series that they belong with. And again, in an effort to make it go a little more smoothly. So we have a little bit of a chore in front of us with the 4,000 and the 5,000 series. They are definitely large and important, but a lot of information there. Our next thing on here is we're continuing to try and connect our students. Today's announcement and yesterday's announcement do not help, as we've now moved the high school remote. It's something that I personally am struggling with. We know our students are struggling at social emotional side. We know that we are not connecting with them as nice or as well as we'd like to, and that's really at all levels. We've talked a lot about how to address that. Really hard to do that when we're going back and forth from the virtual world to the in-person world. Hard to kind of get any traction. So I know Heath has been working closely with the high school administrative team in an effort to try and figure out ways to connect students as they're seeing some decrease in performance there. And one of the things that we wanted to do, and Mark Bubniak's been working with, is our coaches to just bring back kind of open gyms. We'd follow all of the current guidance, and I think we can do it and do it safely, but anything we can do to connect our kids. This is obviously temporarily on hold since we won't be in person for the following next few days. But again, we're trying to do what we can to connect our students in any way we can figure out. Social media data, this was in your board report, but thought I'd share it again. Really points to the fantastic job that Brian is doing. We've talked about this every month. I asked him to put this together monthly for us. And again, we've picked suburban and urban and neighboring districts and suburban council districts. But when you really see our performance in terms of the amount of our social presence and where we stand, it's pretty impressive. And this is with Brian really doing the work as a 0.6. He's with us 3 days a week, although he is literally available to us 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. He's phenomenal. But he does quite a good job as a half-time, basically, employee. And you can see some of our most popular items that are on here. Oh. I think Lauren is going to be joining us momentarily. Just got the notification she's in the waiting room. So that's just sort of our social media component on that. And then just kind of wanted to give you a brief update. This was not in a previous board update, so I kind of put this together. It's confusing. We're kind of running in parallel, I guess you could say, right now. And at the same time, feel like we're kind of running on ice in both cases. So we have a testing plan. The governor, there's the zones, the yellow, orange, and red zones, and that's what we've been operating under the anticipation that eventually we'd be placed in a zone in a designated area and have to do testing in order to stay open. Changed a little bit as the metric changed. The hospitalization was kind of part of that. And then we were made aware that it was a new metric, which was if your county was at testing at a 9% positivity rate or higher, then you had to test. Everyone's looking for more guidance. We haven't received that guidance. So everyone's kind of on hold with what we're supposed to be doing and can be doing and should be doing. In conjunction with our BOCES, we have actively begun researching surveillance testing, which would be testing proactively. So before we're in a zone or before we're told we have to, but sort of you could think of the surveillance testing as sort of being proactive testing. There's a lot of questions with that regarding what we can and can't do and determining our supply of tests and where those are coming from. And if we use up that supply for surveillance testing, will we have those if we are required to test as being part of a zone or a positivity rate that's exceeding our county? So there is just a lot of questions on that. I just wanted you to be aware that I guess that's the running on ice part. While it seems like it's really not going anywhere, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. I do feel like we are extremely well prepared right now to be able to implement either surveillance testing or, excuse me, or the required testing if we need to. We have pretty much everything we need. BOCES has received the tests, so we know we have tests available to us. We have a plan. We've got the training done. We're moving things along pretty quickly. Probably the biggest thing now is we want to make sure our testing team is completely vaccinated. Some of the members are, some are not yet, based on when we're able to get people in for their vaccination. But we wanted to make sure our entire testing team was vaccinated before they were doing this. Kind of going along that same line is the vaccine piece, which is very new, right? So the 1B group became eligible today. That's includes all school employees. So we are very actively working on two scenarios, right? And again, this has changed. I don't even know the details, but I was told today that the state may have switched from county distribution to regional and setting up larger state testing centers. I don't even know if that's actually accurate. I've not been able to, haven't had any time to spend to dive into that. So this was written prior to that. The way that we're trying to get our folks vaccinated is, one, we've sent out links that are out there of testing sites that people can go to on their own. We know those sites are pretty jammed up and people are having a hard time getting appointments, or at least getting them in the relatively near future. So what we've tried to do is be very proactive with this. Questar has done a great job and taking this on and working with our county. We've done a survey, so we have an idea of about what the percentage of our employees are that are interested in taking the vaccine or getting the vaccine. About 80% of our people responded to our survey, and from that 80%, about 80%, 81 to be exact, said they would take the vaccine. So we feel like we have a solid number of people who are interested and want the vaccine, which is great. The other thing that we're looking at doing besides going through Questar and the county is our directors of nursing, who, as you know, have been fantastic since this thing started for us in March, have proactively begun conversations with a local pharmacy to see if they'd be willing to vaccinate our folks. We are hoping to be able to announce a plan. There's nothing definite yet. Again, a lot is happening. We're not in a position now to announce anything or to make definitive plans, but we feel like we're getting closer. So again, there's really three options at this point. You can either go to these websites and try and get a test for yourself, since 1B is open and we are eligible. 2, working through our BOCES and through Questar to try and secure vaccines and make that happen. We do that hopefully like on site. Or 3, do it more in that flu clinic style like we've done in the past with a local pharmacy as a partner. What I've been told is that last option is what people are starting to look at, and they're starting to maybe be pushed a little bit more at the state level from what I'm being told. So we're ahead of the curve on that, and that we've hopefully come close to at least securing a partner and can move forward with that. So a lot going on that front. The only other thing I had in the report I want to mention is the capital project. I know before the vacation, we talked about bringing it back in our December meeting in January. Our thought was to bring it back to the next meeting, which would give us a little more time to kind of think through and process where we are and where we're headed. I think we do definitely need to have another board discussion and get some more input from the board in terms of what it is that the board needs and wants from us before we can really go back to the table and figure things out on our own. I think we have a pretty good understanding of where we are in terms of the projects and the menu of items that are on there and the dollar amounts associated with them. So really we'll be looking for guidance, I think, from the board and to kind of navigate this a little bit. So I think we forgot about it, but looking at really the second January meeting where we'll pick that back up and run with it. Any questions on the report?
Are we getting any, like, a lot of feedback? I'm seeing some chatter online, but are we getting feedback directly to the district about the transitions from, like the hybrid to the virtual and then back again? I know it's affecting everybody differently, but I'm wondering, like, what are we hearing from the students on the transitioning back and forth? Are we getting anything on that?
I mean, I don't, I don't go to our Facebook page, to be completely honest. What we have talked to is our administrators, who have been in contact with our teachers and with our students. We're very well aware that the back and forth and the switching of models is not helpful, right? So in a perfect world, we wouldn't be doing it. We believe strongly in the in-person model, and we want to continue doing that when we can. We have had a pivot to this remote instruction as necessary. So what we have openly talked about is, do we need to make that model change, especially at 9/12 and maybe even at 6/12 for a longer duration? And we had said the next time we pivoted to this, that we'd consider that strongly. And yesterday with the late notice, it was really about trying to figure out the best plan for today. Today, the plan was really focused on, okay, what are we doing the rest of the week, especially with K-5, because we know that's the heaviest lift. Now, I think we really need to dive into what does 9/12 and 6/12 look at more, let's say longer term, maybe end of January, maybe it's up until February break, maybe it's until March 1st. It's a very, there's a lot of complexity to it. And we understand the need for consistency with the model as students are moving between virtual and in person, either by choice because they're choosing to, or by force because we are actually opening and closing school. We also know there's ramifications of a longer term, I'll use the word closure, but switch to remote for 9/12. And there's positive and there's negative ramifications. Certainly the most positive one is it frees up staff. And that's the reason we kind of moved that direction last time. We went K-12, then we went K-8, then we went K-5, so that we could utilize our substitutes, which is clearly right now a shallower pool than it's been, and our non-instructional folks and our aides and our assistants and anyone we could in the K-5 level to keep those buildings open. So that's probably the biggest benefit. Obviously, the biggest concern is when you start going down that road of not having buildings open, then there's positions that aren't as needed, right? So we understand the need to make sure that we're balancing all those things, because if we are going to move to that remote model long term, if we really think that's where we're headed, we really need to think through strategically and deliberately what spots do we need to maintain. So it's how long do you do this? And again, the February break, it's good and bad, right? It's a nice break point, but then just like we did with the holiday break and the Thanksgiving break and the summer break with Labor Day, do you come back 2 weeks after the February break? So you can kind of keep pushing this out. So there's a lot of factors that we really have to consider before we go down that path, I think.
So Rensselaer County reported another 275 cases today, and all of the data on that is not out yet, but that is the preliminary. So obviously the number of cases in the community is affecting everyone, whether or not it's our staff directly or our students directly. It's affecting from a household perspective, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing clearly is the impact is greater, right? It's not just student cases, but there's cases coming into schools from families and from the community more so than I think we've seen. Especially we're coming off being remote, so a lot of what we're seeing is almost exclusively coming to us from outside in. Which has been the pattern overall in most places in terms of the general belief in terms of spread. I think what we're clearly seeing is more of the virus ripping through households. There was one point where we were very clear in our conversations with DOH that the expectation was that if one person got it, multiple people would, and it wasn't really happening. At least anecdotally from what we could tell and what DOH was telling us, that at some point switched. And we are clearly seeing it from our own end, anecdotally, our own data, but also in our conversations with the county, that it does seem to be much more likely if one person is infected, others are. I don't know the reasoning for that.
Windows closed and recirculated.
Closed. Yeah, so but it does clearly seem to be that. So that's having a bigger impact. We adopted the no C contacts to work or school, I think earlier than most. I just saw something in Albany County. I believe the Albany County DOH actually put that out to their schools that said C contacts should no longer be allowed to attend, or I think at least, siblings. So if I'm sick or if my brother's sick and I go to school, I should no longer be in school. We've been doing that now for a little bit. So we've tried to stay ahead of the curve as much as we can, but I think to answer your question, Megan, I think we're seeing more spread. And as you mentioned, just the volume of number of cases would indicate that it's just, it's grown quite significantly. So.
Well, thank you, Jim. I think you guys are doing a really good job, trying to mitigate the circumstances as best you can. So I think you're doing well and appreciate all of your efforts.
Thank you.
Agree.
All right. So we'll move
Before
on.
you move on to the celebration of successes, since Lauren's here, welcome, Lauren. Should we swear her in? Do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead. I know she got admitted, but then my screen didn't let me see her, so I wasn't sure if she then.
Can you stop
I'm
the
assuming
screen
she's-
sharing while we do it, Jim? Just so.
Yeah.
Oh, great idea, Michael.
All right. Give me one. Uh-oh. All right.
Yes, she is.
Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, I'm so sorry for being late. The link was not working.
No problem.
Lauren, do you have your oath of office with you? We sent, but if you don't, I'll read it. You can just repeat. Are you ready? I'm way up in the corner. You're down here. Are you ready? You're gonna do. Okay. Yep. So this is your public officer's oath, and so you can raise your hand, please, your right hand, and repeat after me, please. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
and the Constitution of the State of New York.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Student Ex Officio Board of Education member.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties as Student Ex Officio Board of Education member
According to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
All right, congratulations. If you were here, if we were all together, I'd shake your hand and say, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yes,
All right.
welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to assume that other people are having a problem with Lauren's connection, or is it just me? Okay. So Lauren, I don't want you to think we're laughing at you because we laugh like a few seconds after you say something because it's delayed or something. We're a little bit off. So if things seem to be off a little bit, you're delayed on our end and a little breaking up. So. All right. Let me share this again and we will go to our celebrations of success video. All right. Lauren, you're in all of our Animotos. I don't want you to think that was coincidental. We make sure you're in every one. That's how we do it. So, all right, that is our celebration of success video. And next we have up our third and final elementary school learning team presentation. Last, but certainly not least. So we have our three principals, Josh, who's over at Post and Kill, Laura at West Sand Lake for a little bit longer, and Dennis over at Miller Hill Sand Lake. And also joining tonight is Camille to represent the special ed side of things. And I think that is it, right? So I will turn it over to the team for their presentation.
So I believe I'm presenting. So if you give me just a second here, I'll pull up the presentation. If you could bear with me, I'm more of a Google Meet guy than a Zoom guy, but I'll try to do this. All right. So, all right. So hopefully I'm sharing and everybody can see.
Yep, we're good, Josh.
All right. So I will turn it over. Dennis is going to get us started, and we will go through this.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. As Dr. Franchini mentioned, I'm Dennis Simpson, the principal at Miller Hill Sand Lake, joined by Laura Kyer, the principal of West Sand Lake, and Josh Gella, principal of Post and Kill. And we are here representing the K-5 faculty and staff as we provide the update for the elementary academic learning team. Josh, you can go to the next slide. So before we get into our actual presentation, maybe, there we go. We want to take a minute and share with you a brief video that showcases some of the highlights of our elementary reopening. Josh, I'm not getting the audio. Jim, are you hearing the audio? There is a soundtrack that goes along with it, something like this. Do, 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 do.
I could hear the audio, so I'm not sure what went wrong there, but I can tell you when I practiced in Google Meet, it did have audio, so I apologize.
Well, no worries. It was a very catchy tune, and we want to again thank Brian Radowitz for helping us put that together. And this way, you won't have that earworm in your head as you go to bed tonight with the do 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 do. But in any case, so with that, obviously, we want to applaud the efforts of everybody for everything that we're doing for our students, whether they're in person or are learning remotely. Have been learning remotely since September, or the back and forth of our pivot. You know, our students deserve the best instruction, and we are committed to providing that to them, no matter what model of instruction we are implementing. Because even in the midst of a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, the work of educating our youth must continue. So, as I mentioned, tonight we're going to be talking about the elementary action or academic learning team work towards our district goals. This is a K-5 collaborative effort. So obviously the district goals were adopted by the board. The K-5 building administrators worked with our K-5 teacher leaders in developing the objectives that are aligned to those goals. And then our building and grade level departments and teams, so for example, the grade 2 teachers of all 3 elementary buildings got together and formulated, worked on the action steps that go along with, or that work towards those objectives in support of those goals. So in reality, the goals are the end. The objectives are kind of the path to that end, and the action steps are the vehicle that will lead us to, again, achieving those objectives and accomplishing our goals. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn the speaker over to Mrs. Kyer, and she's going to elaborate more on goal number 1 and the work that K-5 is doing towards that end.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see all of you. As you are aware, the district goal number 1 is that students will graduate college and career ready. We have broken this down to our elementary objectives, and in the 2021 school year, students will maintain or improve their performance from the fall to spring benchmarking using identified reading assessments with the following qualifications. If equal or above 25th percentile on the fall benchmark, students will maintain in the average range. If they're below the 25th percentile in the fall benchmark, students will improve their percentile rank. Now, what we are using for our benchmarking is called FastBridge. This assessment is given to students at the beginning of the school year, the middle of the school year, and the end of the school year. Actually, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing our mid-year cycle. And really, the screening assessments that we use those to identify, but we get much deeper as well. We use a lot of different materials, from Lyrics to Learning to Ames Web. We use Amplify. We use independent reading practices, some other screening assessments that we get into as well. Teachers use this data and inquiry cycles to identify if students are not on track for achieving the objective. We use interventions and progress monitoring to support the students. Now, as Dennis mentioned, each grade level did an action step, and their action steps are all slated around achieving our objective to improve student achievement. We have focused on language arts at this time, and we use a couple of different programs. We participate, you can move to the next, Josh. We participate using the Common Core, and we use a program at the elementary for K through 2, which is called CKLA. It's Core Knowledge of Language Arts. And at 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we use the New York State modules. One of the unique things that has really emphasized this year is the purposeful instructional planning really requires teachers to know what foundational learning came just before them and which knowledge or skills are on the horizon for our students. This year, because the students went home remotely in March, teachers really had to dive in and learn the curriculum that was previous, and in some cases learned the curriculum that would be challenging them as well. So it has been quite a different year. Some of the other things that we are using is called 95%. This is a phoneme substitution. We use Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Curriculum, and there's 35 different lessons focusing on 8 phonemic awareness skills, along with 2 additional activities for letter and sound recognition and language awareness. Teachers spend about 10 to 12 minutes in the classroom setting, reinforcing these and building the bridge to them. So as I mentioned, the action steps all really are more individualized for a grade level as to how we are going to have these children graduate college and career ready. The language arts curriculum is very rich and engaging content. It's the center of our instruction. As I mentioned, the Amplify CKLA and the New York State ELA modules. Students are building strong area knowledge in history, science, literature, the arts by learning to read and write. I purposely picked some of these pictures that are on this slide because we have really done a lot outside, and we continue to teach outside as much as possible. Building a snowman, well, they had a huge lesson, a science lesson around building the snowman and the properties of matter. And some of the kids in the middle who are digging plants, well, that was part of a science lesson as well. And it's been fun re-engaging them to hands-on learning, because in the classroom, we really can't share a lot of individual materials. So getting them outside and getting their hands dirty and their feet wet has been fun, and another way that we're able to challenge our students. I want to mention that I really feel like the kids are adjusting so well. I know it was asked about how is it them jumping from one academic setting to another, and the resiliency of these children is absolutely amazing. They have done great. Today, I was fortunate enough to talk to 78 different families today, and I was nervous about every call, thinking, oh, gee, I hope they don't, aren't upset about us having to change. And the community has been outstanding. The teachers have been super. They've really been resilient. It is definitely a job that none of us have ever been trained to do under these circumstances, but everyone has given their best, continues to give their best, regardless of what setting they're in. And really, really proud to be a part of this elementary team. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to provide the update for district goal number 2, which is that students will proactively engage in their school community. And just as the events over the last 10 months have certainly provided some challenges in regards to academic progress and the continuum of learning, I would argue that nothing is more important than making sure that our students are engaged and their social emotional needs are met. And that has been a priority, quite frankly, of all of the adults that work in our schools, both in person and virtual. So for this school year, we're targeting 100% of our students to participate in classroom connection activities, which are our character education, social emotional engagement type of initiatives. And our plan is to measure the success of this objective with a student survey near the end of the year. That will be aligned to, as Laura mentioned, the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year academic assessments. We're going to align the student survey with the spring administration of those assessments. You can go to the next slide, Josh. And as so this is the template that we use. We have the district goals, the objectives, again, that were developed by our teacher leaders in collaboration with the building administration. And then each grade level develops their individual grade level action steps. And I do want to say that in this current COVID environment in school, it is a little bit more challenging because these are things that would typically be accomplished on the carpet, during circle time, when everybody's truly together physically as a classroom community. It's a little bit more difficult to do with everybody at their individual workstations, appropriately physically distanced, but it doesn't make it any less the priority. And again, irregardless of what model of instruction we're implementing at any moment, the social emotional needs of the children will always be our priority. So this is what we're working towards. Again, student engagement really relates directly to social emotional learning, and that engagement requires that connection. If we learned anything over these last 10 months, it is the importance of what the school community provides to our greater Averill Park community, and specifically to our youngest members of that community, both for basic needs such as food and counseling, even just a voice, someone to listen to them. So again, while we have a time in our day called Classroom Connection Time, and it's a dedicated time both for in-person learning and for virtual learning, the importance of keeping the students engaged goes well beyond that. Teachers could be in the middle of a language arts lesson and come to a realization that they might need to put the brakes on for a moment and address something for their classroom community, and they'll do that. We also wanted to maintain our relationship that we've established over the years with Kiwanis and our K-Kid programs to teach and facilitate service to others. And really, it's just a situation where teachers understand that they need to meet students where they need them to be. Yes, we have programs such as zones of regulation and so forth, but each individual child went through these past 10 months, and quite frankly, even their life. It's a different experience. It's a unique experience. And again, if anything, these past 10 months have allowed us to do, it's really understand individual situations and be as compassionate and empathetic towards each individual situation as we can be. And our staff just, again, has done an amazing job. The teachers and the support staff in being there to support the students in a variety of ways to keep them not only academically engaged, but also socially engaged at a time when, quite frankly, it's a bit of a challenge. It's not always easy to see a smile behind a mask, but we know when they're there. So, and now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gella. He's going to close it up for us.
All right, now I got to multitask and change my own slides and talk. So, thank you to Dennis and to Laura for talking through goals 1 and 2 respectively. Obviously, I'm going to take the opportunity to talk through goal 3. District goal 3 has to do with digital fluency. Quite honestly, I think a little bit right now, we kind of associate goal 3 with our virtual learning, and it's not necessarily tied to that. Digital fluency is something that students need, whether they're in person, whether there's a pandemic or not. It's an area, it's a skill set that requires a lot of time to develop, and it needs to be very strategic in how we approach these skills. So our goal here from the district is that students will be digitally fluent by being able to demonstrate the ability to be productive and safe in our current technology influenced society. As Dennis and Laura both kind of spoke to, our elementary level objectives came from our elementary leadership as well as our teacher leaders. And as we kind of work through this part of development of an objective, we actually went back to some of the feedback that we received through survey data after our spring closure. And some of the feedback that we got was good feedback. It was a little bit critical, but it was good nonetheless. So over the summer, as we developed and proceeded towards preparing for the 2021 school year, we really, having had that information shared with us, we needed to provide more consistency. And as a result of that, we really developed and took the time to develop our learning platforms. K2 is utilizing the Seesaw platform, whereas 3.5 is utilizing the Google Classroom, which is also what is utilized at the middle school as well. I think a big part of the feedback that we received was how critical and important it is for age-appropriate platforms, as well as some consistency, not just within buildings, but also across the district and grade levels. So that's really kind of where we got to this point with our learning platforms. It also resulted in a lot of investment in time and energy from a professional development standpoint in preparing for this current school year. We prioritize that as a way to help our teachers best prepare for these learning platforms to utilize them to the best of their ability. So again, this is a similar slide, just the only difference is the goal and the objectives. But really kind of how we envision this as an elementary leadership team is we really take that district goal, and then we want to utilize that from the elementary leadership team with the teacher leaders and the building administrators to develop an objective that can really guide the work at the grade level. So again, you'll see independent grade level action steps. And again, these are action steps that are very age specific. When we look at digital fluency, obviously there's a progression that has to happen over the K through 5 continuum as a result of, the expectation for digital fluency of a kindergartner certainly cannot be the same as a 5th grader preparing to head to the middle school. So, each grade level then, takes the elementary objective and develops the action steps that can support that, and again, helping us reach our district goal. So each grade level spent a lot of time working through that, but we did have some common themes as we kind of navigated through that. And one of them was that concept of becoming digitally fluent. Obviously, I spoke to it a little bit ago, that accessing learning platforms was a key component of that. And a lot of the work, whether students are in person or virtual, for being able to access these platforms was developed really at the beginning of the year, and teachers taking the time to, show and highlight these platforms, provide time and opportunity for students to navigate them and learn to utilize them in safe ways. In addition to not only navigating the platforms, but also how students and families can utilize these platforms for the additional learning resources that we have available to this. Mrs. Kyer spoke a little bit earlier to some of that supplemental resources that we have, and we're utilizing access to them through our learning platforms. Another big concept that we talked a lot about becoming digitally fluent was that balance of synchronous and asynchronous learning. And this is done very easily in the classroom and happens almost without thinking a lot of times in classrooms. One of the things that we wanted to really kind of dive into this year was that flexibility when we are in person or switching to virtual, or in the case of students who are have chosen virtual for the year. We want to be able to balance this synchronous and asynchronous. We want to balance that live and independent. And really, we want to do that at all levels because it's important. I think we would all agree that, nobody wants their child in front of a Chromebook for, an entire school day. And, it's very easy to understand that concept in the classroom when, you can do different activities and independent and small group and transition easily. That same balance carries over into that virtual setting too. So that's something that we've really worked through, and our students and teachers have been very successful with that. In addition, and obviously becoming digitally fluent requires a level of safety, and especially at the primary grades and elementary in general, is that that time to talk through the safety of being digitally fluent, and setting clear expectations for the use of technology is critical. And obviously, you know, as we adjust from digital fluency to production and productivity and safety, you know, those are all things that we want to highlight and focus as we go. And, you know, obviously, again, this kind of goes back to those grade level action steps, where when we develop these action steps, these are the things that we're keeping in mind. We're keeping in mind digital fluency. We're keeping in mind production. We're keeping in mind safety. And again, at the elementary level, these are all things that need to be explicitly discussed and explicitly shown, and time to practice. Obviously, one of the first things we really want to talk about is what needs to be secure in a digital world. And, you know, and in essence, you know, those passwords and those security features associated with that. As a result of that, we're actually utilizing the Clever platform, which helps us navigate this, especially at our youngest grade levels, to be able to help support students and families, and not have to have, you know, passwords written on the refrigerator, so that we can get into the programs that we need to. So that's been hugely successful as well. And again, you know, just additional topics that kind of get talked about naturally as we utilize, you know, our digital technologies is, you know, what actually is technology, what constitutes what technology is, and how has technology advanced over time. So those are all topics that, you know, obviously at the appropriate grade level kind of get navigated through and talked through. We also talk a lot about that, introducing, you know, that public space versus private space, shared spaces, and using that information. And this is really something where we really kind of spend a lot of time speaking to students and having conversations regarding, you know, what it is in those digital spaces, and, you know, that words still have power in those digital spaces. And that same behavior that we want to see in classrooms is what we want to see in the digital formats as well. So that's also an important one. And also, you know, finally, I think one of the things that we want to always kind of continue to talk about, regardless of whether we're in person or virtual, is that balance. You know, there's a significant part of life that requires a balance, and, you know, digital fluency is no different than that. So that idea of wanting to be able to, you know, balance independent and collaborative, being able to balance, you know, writing and also collaborating with others, you know, and communicating through text, communicating through video, communicating through a Meet. We want to be able to do all of those things while still providing students the opportunity to create. So I think when we kind of look at this district goal, you know, it's certainly one that you know, our current situation has probably expedited a little bit, but it's certainly one that is critical for all students. It's critical for them to progress as students in the K-12 continuum, the post-secondary pathway, and even the professional pathway. You know, this is something where these skills need to be taught, need to be explicitly shared and discussed as we kind of move forward. So, you know, that kind of takes us through our district goals and how we've kind of navigated our district goals, developed our learning objectives, and then also had grade level teams work towards developing action steps that could be both measurable and reviewed to see where we stand at the end of the year. As we kind of begin to transition this over and kind of wrap this up, you know, Mrs. Kyer pointed this out a little bit earlier, and, you know, I think it's important to kind of echo, you know, that concept of resiliency. You know, one of the things that we hear often or read about or, you know, see on social media is that, you know, we're behind or our kids are behind. And, you know, I guess that would have more meaning to me if this situation was unique to Averill Park or unique to Rensselaer County or even just New York in general. I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is our current situation is a global pandemic. And as a result, it's really truly impacted everyone across the world. So I don't necessarily know that it's necessarily we're behind. Do we face challenges? Yes, we absolutely face challenges. Are there gaps? There are gaps, but we have teachers who are working really hard to fill those gaps and be creative in finding ways to overcome that. I think at the end of the day, this idea and this concept of resiliency is one that is incredibly important now more than ever. And being able to talk about it is important because what we're developing is a lifelong skill that our students will have for regardless of what challenges they're going to face. And we certainly know that they will face challenges, but they're developing a sense of grit that really can't necessarily be measured, but it's happening each and every day. So, you know, as Dennis mentioned earlier, when you can't necessarily, you know, see the smile behind the mask, you know, you can certainly see it. You know, you can see it in students' eyes each and every day as they progress. So I guess finally, kind of in closing, I would just like to kind of recognize the flexibility and hard work of everyone in our school community, our students, our teachers, certainly our families as we navigate and continue to navigate these uncertain times. And we appreciate everyone's dedication and commitment to the students of Averill Park. So with that said, we appreciate your time tonight. Questions, I guess?
Can you touch a little bit on some of, I absolutely agree with you that our teachers have been resilient and have found ways around and working through these things that we've been dealing with. Can we touch on some of the different kind of out of the box things that our teachers have been doing? I know, you know, like individual, you know, time with students and things like that is not, it's not being missed because the teachers are, you know, taking the extra mile. So I'm kind of curious, what are some of the things that are, you know, that are working the best in those programs?
Well, I think one of the, and Laura and Dennis, if you guys want to unmute, I think we can all probably have different things to share. You know, for me, I think to kind of take a look at this question is, I think part of the thing is that, you know, we're constantly learning, we're constantly growing as we navigate this, teachers and students included. So I think whether it's, I think personally, I think the greatest successes that I see are teachers' willingness to try new things. I don't know that's always been the case in our profession, but the risk taking that's happening, whether it's a you know, teacher who's trying to utilize a different resource or tool, whether it's a Jamboard or, you know, ways to create that opportunity for collaboration through digital technology. And then also being able to kind of utilize that technology, whether it's in person or virtual, to then create opportunities for students to collaborate together. And one of the ways that we've kind of developed this is that when we're in those virtual settings, is being able to have an all hands on deck kind of approach, where we have aides and, you know, other additional staff members who are willing to jump in and be able to watch and participate with one group while a teacher is working in another group. So I think that idea, that concept of being creative and finding new ways to be able to still provide that small group attention in a virtual atmosphere is probably one of the, I think, bright spots that I've seen.
One of the areas, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One of the areas that I have seen teachers grow in a lot more is we've always talked about backwards design and how looking at what is the end result. And teachers have always had the standards and, you know, and know what they have to do. But now they're really saying, all right, how am I going to get students to achieve a goal in a very different way than them standing in front of the classroom and just regurgitating information. They have embraced the technology component of it. They've embraced the opportunity for kids to really shine. Kids are, they understand technology a lot better than most of us, definitely me included. And kids are teaching us new ways and telling us. And I think the children they're so used to video games and so used to television that they're finding a way to actually make these instruments for learning instead. And they're doing a great job. I mean, you know, think about you've been teaching fractions with manipulatives for 20 some years. And now you're outside with 6 feet apart and you've always done pairs. And, you know, it's just thinking about how you can still master and be successful with the goal in all new creative ways. I mean, specific examples they're just all, I mean, they're all over my head. That I can't get one out, but
Well, Megan, I mean,
even the special area teachers have been unbelievably creative. They're all moving from classroom to classroom on a cart. They have less than 5 minutes. They've got all their belongings. They have been phenomenal as well. And I definitely don't want to forget the arts with this.
And I can give you a specific example of a small sample size. And, you know, when we're forced to have to remove students from school for quarantine reasons and so forth, you know, that only enhances our desire to make sure that we stay connected with them. I mean, I've seen examples of teachers, you know, in-person teachers, and you got a child on quarantine, and that child joins the instruction via Google Meet. You know, they're literally a Chromebook sitting on their desk, as we used to see in sci-fi movies, and you know, the child's not missing a beat. You know, the teacher's able to provide that feedback to the work the child's doing in immediate, you know, in real time, and you know, it's an exchange and an interaction no different than what's happening with a child physically, you know, in the same room as you.
Josh, can you turn off the screen sharing so we can see faces?
Yeah.
And I guess one thing I want to follow up on that Josh had said is, you know, I think it's a fair thing to say that we're all living with a little bit of fear. You know, we're afraid of you know, whatever's happening, but we're also fearful for our family and the well-being of our family and so forth. And the teachers have, you know, when they you know, open up their classroom on the computer or walk into their classroom, they put that fear aside and know that they have a responsibility and a commitment to, again, provide the loving, nurturing environment and experience that our children deserve and quite frankly need more than ever before. So I can't commend them enough. And again, as Josh said, you know, their willingness to try whatever it is that's going to make that connection and make it work for that child, they're okay to do. I mean, and again, having a resource in our district like Melissa Weatherwax, who provides instructional technology support. I mean, you know, we've got teachers, you know, we've got some teachers who will dive right into the newest technological tool. And others are, you know, they want to, but they're just hesitant and reluctant to. And they, you know, you put a support like Melissa Weatherwax in place, and they're so comfortable in coming out of their box and coming out of their comfort zone to, again, meet children where they need them. So.
And that was well put, Dennis. I think my final thought that I would share with that is that you made me think of, you know, teachers used to be in their classroom with their 4 walls, and now they're recognizing the need to really support each other, whether it be technology, whether it be emotionally, socially, whether, you know, it really has developed into another community in the building, a deeper, richer community.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I was gonna kind of end up with is that, I think the biggest change, and I think Dennis, Laura, and I mean, we have a million of them, but can't come up with a specific one for you right now. But I think the biggest thing is the old playbook's gone. The old playbook of, this is how I've done it for the last 4 years or 5 years or 10 years or whatever. That's all out the window. And, teachers are collaborating. They're asking questions. They're being vulnerable and saying, I don't know how to do this. Can you show me? They're going to the person next door or down the hall. I think that's where we're seeing the most significant, impactful change as a result of this.
I appreciate all of your responses. I see in my own personal situation the above and the beyond, but I also get a lot of feedback in the community from the above and the beyond, and the presentations that you guys give to us here really show the depth and care that you're putting into, everything from the top all the way to the student level. And I think we're really lucky in Averill Park to have such amazing teachers for our kids. So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Yeah, and to turn the mirror back on you guys with your last slide, that we certainly deeply appreciate what you guys do for every student every day. I mean, it speaks volumes, and we certainly appreciate that.
I second that.
Hey, Jesse, can I ask a real quick question?
Yeah, of course.
It's really specific. That's something that I noticed. And I was curious as to whether there was specific training or was it see what you can get. One of the things that I noticed, and it kind of blew me away, was the ability that we are fully remote, and the ability of their teachers to do the assessment. So when, especially for the younger one, where it's really the phonics, you're talking about Heggerty, that's our daily routine is Heggerty. But, when they have the individual moments, and it's really such a short amount of time, but you can see that her teachers picking up, like they're going right to what's, and I was wondering if, were there resources kind of out in the greater world, like a training where it's like, okay, if you only have 3 minutes on a 4-inch screen or 11-inch screen, how can you, how do you pick up the clues of what you're looking for? Or is that inherent? Because I mean, it's incredibly impressive to see them just going right to exactly what's needed. I was just curious about the amount of sort of formal training versus
while there are and have been a byproduct of these past 10 months are, people are publishing, hybrid teacher's guide to working and so forth. And certainly, there are people that put out their ideas and they have been embraced by a number of people. But as Josh said, the old playbook is gone. And honestly, Samantha, I think it's more along the lines of a lot of trial and error, and and a lot of reflection. I mean, if anything, there's been a tremendous amount of reflection, quite frankly, from all of us on the things that are working, the things that aren't working, the things that are effective for students, and again, a lot of professional conversation. It's tough when teachers can't be physically together and collaborate, but that still hasn't stopped them from having those conversations that improve their practice.
Yeah.
And so I unfortunately I wish there was a manual, but I think it's more of an experience. And this when I was instructing this child, I did this and it worked.
Yes.
And that conversation, it's kind of that old ripple in the water effect, I guess.
Yeah,
we don't want a manual. We want this manual to be thrown away after this.
Well, and I wonder how they're, how brains sort of get attuned to, Sherlock Holmes sort of flipped across my brain one day when they were doing an assessment, and it just to pick up on that, it was just very impressive. And thanks. Good job.
I just wanted to say that I think you three are superstars. We have some excellent leaders in this district, and you three are on the tops. The teachers are creative because they're not afraid to stumble. And I know they work with you to rebound and to try again. And that's really a credit to the leadership in your buildings. And you personify that. So thank you very much.
Does anyone have anything else for these folks? We do appreciate your time tonight. I guess, Jim, this is still your superintendent's report, so I'll let you finish, but thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thanks for letting us share with you tonight.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks to our elementary folks and Camille as well for joining us. We appreciate it. And that was a strong ending to our presentation series on our district learning team. A different year with our objectives and our goals and our action steps. But I think you can see the work is still being done, and done with fidelity and with students at the center of it. So thank you. You guys are certainly welcome to stay around. No one's taken us up on that offer, so feel free to leave. But you can catch it on YouTube if you want to get off for a minute and head over there. But thanks
Thank you all.
and that turn it back over to Jesse. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thanks. I'll give everyone a second to disconnect if they want to. Okay. That was very informative, and we certainly appreciate that. So we're now on to item number 4 for public comment. Community members seeking to provide questions or comments to the Board of Education should email them to our district clerk at the email address provided on the agenda. And I will mention that we received a comment from Mr. Thomas Russell that was distributed via email, that was distributed to the entire board. The district clerk received that earlier this afternoon. So Mr. Russell, if you're watching, thank you for your input. We appreciate that. Moving on to item number 5, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Megan?
Megan, second?
Anne seconded. I saw her hand.
Okay, Anne, thank you. I would like to start the discussion by saying a huge congratulations to Michael on his retirement being brought forth on this agenda for us to approve. Michael, you will be sorely missed, as we appreciate your dedication, your transparency, and always putting the students of this district first with your financial eyes. I mean, that is so appreciated. Big shoes to fill, but we're very happy for you that you're able to be in the position to retire. So congratulations on that. And I also want to mention that Laura's retiring too, and we appreciate her service for all these years to the district.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you back to the district before I left the meeting early. Thank you, everyone. I've enjoyed my time here tremendously, and we'll miss it a great deal.
Laura,
We'll miss you too.
Before you go, Laura, I am so glad that you stuck around, because I just wanted to take a moment, having been a West Sand Lake parent since we moved to the district, and you have been building principal for all 3 of my kids. And I've seen you in action with the children so much, and you're so great. And it's, I'm happy for you, but I'm not happy, because we are going to have a real serious hard time finding a replacement that does such an amazing job for our kids. We love you. So congratulations on your retirement. Thank you for all of your hard work and dedication and years of service.
Well, thank you. I intended on telling families before tonight, but unfortunately last night and today got in the way. So I will plan on telling parents tomorrow. Hopefully they're not watching the YouTube now and hearing it this way. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. My kids enjoyed West Sand Lake immensely, and a lot of that is due to your leadership.
Thank you, Peter.
I also wanted to say with Michael, I've been on the board, I guess, as long as Michael has been with the district, and we've been through some pretty hard times back in the early years, and some have been very personally difficult for Michael. I won't go into any details, but Michael's weathered the storm and has always put the interests of the district first. And I appreciate his leadership. I appreciate his foresight in terms of managing the budget and convincing the board that it was the right thing to do. Not always an easy task. I don't know what your plans are for retirement, Michael. I'm assuming it might be going back to refereeing since we may have sports in the fall, but you will be missed.
I wanted to take a minute to thank Mike with being a new member on the board and having a million questions and then questions upon questions and not really, knowing how to navigate getting started. I was really appreciative to have the guidance and all of the explanation as a fellow person who always gives the long version. I appreciate it very much. The details are important. And so I have always appreciated the details. When I saw that you were retiring, I was again despondent and bummed because we are going to have a hard time finding someone who does such an amazing job. And we appreciate you. So thank you so much for your years of service. And I'm going to miss you.
Geez Louise, you guys are also darn eloquent. Mrs. Kyer, Mr. Ouimet, by all means, appreciate all your diligence and all the work that you've done over time. And certainly as we've worked together, while I didn't have the opportunity to have kids at West Sand Lake, I heard nothing but great things in terms of the time spent there for a lot of our students. So hats off to you, Laura. And Mike, certainly goes without saying that your work has been invaluable to us through thick and thin, some crazy times. So appreciate all your efforts and hope to be able to be out in the fall, even though I may not have a kid running around the field, at least be able to come and cheer on some soccer and catch up at that time.
Mike, this is Doug. Congratulations on I wish you a long and healthy retirement. Well deserved. I know it's a really tough job and people like me give you a hard time sometimes, and I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you. And I echo the same feelings about West Sand Lake School that the others have mentioned. West Sand Lake has always been outstanding. My children and grandchildren have gone through there, and everyone just loves the teachers, the administrators, and how that school is run. So congratulations again to Laura and to Mike.
I just would like to say congratulations to Laura, though I never had any, except for the building condition survey. I didn't really have any interaction with her, but she was always professional. And at every presentation she's done, it's clear that families love her and her leadership there at West Sand Lake. And when I heard about Michael leaving, that's it. It's sad for our district, I think. Just knowing a fellow number nerd that is willing to show us all the fun stuff on how everything cross references, and I get really excited about that kind of stuff. I really like it too. But the professionalism and the diligence for the district is so appreciated, and always balancing the needs of the students with very limited resources is an amazing act to just be able to balance that. I will truly miss you very much, but I hope to see our girls together at least another year on the soccer field, and hopefully track, and hear you out there explaining to us why the referees' calls are wrong. So I hope to see you outside of school, and wish you a very healthy and happy retirement. Thank you for everything, Michael.
I've just got another little newbie thanks to you, Michael. It's people who know a lot sometimes aren't really willing to share it, and that characteristic is it's one of the most important in my mind. So you helped me a lot when I completely had no idea what was going on. So thank you. Thanks for being patient. Sure, a lot of people could say that to Ms. Kyer as well. But yes, thank you for being patient and teaching us.
I'll just say that's funny because that's not something people normally say about me. So thank you.
I mean it. I'm not. Thank you.
Yes. So, yeah, there's so much more to say, but I think everybody said it too. There's two other things on the agenda that I would like to acknowledge, and one is the donation from Challen Hammer for his Amazon Fire tablet. And so we appreciate that. Thank you. And I also want to take a moment to acknowledge Yvonne Phillips, our tax collector. I know that's probably not a fun job, but she does it with thoroughness and accuracy, and that role is, and her work with that role is very much appreciated. So I want to just acknowledge that because it's on our agenda tonight. Does anybody have anything else on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that passes unanimously. Thank you. It moves us on to item number 6, the discussion on the budget guidelines and debt service. It's all you, Michael.
You're going to share, Jim's going to share the screen. Okay. So we have, this is my, I guess, 14th budget. We've always started, actually I didn't create this. We may have modified it a little bit over the years, but this goes back to my predecessor who created this, the predecessor before the 5 people that served for 24 months before me, but the person that was here for a long time had created this. And it really makes sense that we talk about these budget guidelines. They aren't actually, board policy or any kind of formal adopted, document, but they really provide a framework for decision making, not just in the, during the budget time, but whenever we're talking about program and decision making and how it will impact the district fiscally. So you can think about these things in terms of, when a decision is made on whatever it is, how will that decision impact the quality of the educational program? So that's our goal, right? To have a quality educational program, but also while maintaining fiscal responsibility, because there's a lot of things we would really like to do. and would be fabulous to be able to do them, but we know we have certain restraints within our capabilities for the community to support all of the things that we would like to do. It's like that thing I say all the time, and I didn't make this up either, but there's, competing priorities and limited resources. And so you have to sort of balance them, and we use these guidelines in some respects to evaluate, to do those decision making. So I'll just go through these quickly because most of you have seen these, and you really live them, not only just here, but in probably your own personal lives as you make decisions and talk about how you're going to accomplish the goals you want. So we talk about the budget expenditures. We want the budget to accomplish what's the mission, what are the defining goals, and how do we develop that mission? We use, internal stakeholders, all the groups that we've used to develop our mission statement, but then the underlying programs, and you heard them tonight, right, from the elementary. What are the underlying programs that support that mission? And, we communicate that with the board and get board, input and sharing on those, and eventually an adoption of those goals, which are supported by the budget. Community input solicited when we are developing the budget. It's interesting, that's the conversation Jim and I had very briefly today, because this is going to be, we've been fortunate over the past several years, I guess you'd say, there hasn't been a lot of community input in terms of concern about cuts and things like that. There have been some conversations with the community, but not, as Peter put it, there was some really challenging times and some serious budget decisions and community input. And I, use air quotes around input, from the community on steps we were taking in order to preserve programs within the district that were pretty tough, pretty drastic. And we had a lot of community input, people actually, hours of people talking to us about what their feelings were about certain decisions and things like that. So the conversation I had with Jim today, knowing that this is likely to be, despite, maybe some good fortune in terms of federal monies coming to the state to help offset the budget deficit, I think there's likely to be, at best, a budget that doesn't decrease state aid, but it's likely that the budget won't. So the state aid is not going to be sustained at the level of the prior year, and we could talk more about what that means specifically when we get some better information. But in the case where we have to do some sort of modifications to programs, cuts, frankly, it is important to have the community be able to have input. And if we're not in a position because of the pandemic to have folks at board meetings being able to share with us their thoughts, that's the conversation I had with Jim today, is that we'll have to talk to the board about what methodology can we use, because most certainly people will want to share their opinions as we, go down the budget development pathway here. So and then the letter, I didn't catch that till later on this evening, that was sent to us by the community member, the email. Basically, that shares it was as if he was listening to the conversation that Jim and I had, because he has the same concerns about, how are we going to, get community input. So that's something we really need to kind of look, develop some kind of plan and process that allows for that interaction and input. The information about, being readily made available to the community. We'll use the same tools that we use to communicate all the things we do. There's the board meetings, there's social media, there's the website, and we're always available. And I've done it before in the past, and I don't have any problem doing it, now, is talking to community members directly. If folks call me and want to have a conversation about something, I'm always willing to do that. We talk about long-term fiscal stability and predictability. And that's, that goes to, I guess we're putting in a challenging position right now, because this really is in a reference to things like our capital projects, so maintaining our facilities and having a plan for that and making those predictable and understanding what the impact is on the physical plant, on the capital facilities, on the general fund budget itself, and to not have to redirect resources away from educational programs to facilities type expenses unnecessarily. And so that's developing capital plans. It's also developing plans for equipment replacement. When I first came here 13 plus years ago, we didn't have a technology equipment replacement plan. It's really evolved, and working with Lynn and Matt, we've really developed, I feel like, a really strong plan going forward, that supports that one-to-one device and provides support to the educators also. So those are the kinds of things we're talking about in that respect, our bus replacement plan, and those types of budgetary items. Because if you don't do those things, again, like I said, with the capital project, it's going to cause problems where we have to redirect resources. Issues with the bus replacement plan, we're fortunate we got on ourselves finally onto the good 5 lease cycle that gets us on a 10-year replacement plan. But when we don't have those buses replaced, it actually costs us more, because when the buses are out of warranty, the cost of repairs is much more. The time that has to be spent by mechanics is greater. So those kinds of things are what we talk about in these long-term plans that will help us maintain fiscal stability and predictability. Obviously, energy conservation, recycling, those are important topics too. We've tried, with respect to energy conservation, we've started to do the LED bulb replacement on the exterior of facilities to try to improve those situations there. All right. So available grant money, when we utilize grants, our focus has been to not necessarily be reliant on grants. It's hard to do that in this fiscal environment, and it has been for some time. We have to maximize our grants. We do utilize them and I'm talking about in this case, our federal funds. We do use them oftentimes for staffing, and to a great deal. The problem with that is, as you saw a couple years ago when our Title I funds decreased, that means that the general fund and Title I funds decreased. We had anticipated that there would be sufficient funding for a certain position. That wasn't available, so then the general fund has to absorb that position. So we just have to be, cognizant of the potential for over-reliance on grants to fund full-time FTE positions. It's just, we have to be careful about that. So that this is important. This is what we talked about, we talk about when we're recruitment and retention of high quality staff, so that the budget has to be able to support professional salaries and benefits in order to ensure that we can recruit and retain people, for our teaching, our faculty positions, and all our support staff positions. So again, as we're talking about negotiations and things like that, we need to know how those negotiations will impact our recruitment and retention of the quality people, so that we can go, if you go back to number 1, have a high quality educational program. But again, that the budget can also support those contracts, so that we're, responsible fiscally with the budget too. And then projections on state aid, keeping a careful eye on those and understanding long-term aid situations equalization rates, which impact the tax levy, the tax rate increases across the different towns, and other regulatory changes that might impact the budget development. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right, number 10 is really important because this is where, it's about the effort to maintain and keep stable tax rates and within defined rises in the cost of living index and inflation. Well, the cost of living index and inflation is really kind of a, words for the tax levy cap. I mean, that's what we live by and have lived with for, I guess, the last 9 years now. So within that number 10, we have gone to the cap every year, to the top, to the levy limit every year since the cap's been in place. And generally it's been on average. So over those 9 years, I think it's around 2.5% that the increase has been on average. So, that is a question I have, for the board. And I think we'll need an answer, maybe not tonight, but we certainly needs to be a discussion, because we did have some conversation last summer when we were setting the tax levy about the potential for adding additional fund balance to reduce the tax levy that had been planned when the budget was adopted for the 2021 budget. Some conversation then about reducing the tax levy by offsetting it with some fund balance. And then we've also had some other conversations through the capital project discussion and things. And now, as this pandemic has been, come upon us, about concerns about, poverty circumstances in the district, unemployment, changes in fiscal ability for people to support tax increases. We'll need to know, are those conversations that the board has had and that you've talked to us about, are they an indication that the board would be not in favor of going again to the levy limit? I don't know what the levy limit is, but just I would assume at least 2%. That we're going to be looking to do something other than that this year, such as a zero tax levy, because of all the things that you've talked about. That's really important for us to know. It's really important for us to know early on, because as we start to develop the budget, as we start to get knowledge on what state aid looks like for next year, or as we start to project what it potentially could be, that we'll need to know, because that will provide us more information that we'll need to know what is the potential level of cuts that we may have to make. I'd share with the board this. I mean, this is kind of generally how things are sort of playing out. If the budget as a rollover budget will be about $1.5 million increase. That's with some adjustments for things that we are going to have to do related to that would have been capital project items, things that we're going to have to plan for in the coming budget and the general fund budget that like otherwise would have been, like I said, earmarked as capital project items. But basically a rollover budget of 1.5 million means that, if there was a tax levy of 2%, that's, $650,000. The rest we would be looking for in terms of a state aid increase. Well, I think at the best, in my feeling, is that we can't anticipate a state aid increase, likely, or hopefully no decrease. A decrease would be pretty significant and require, an even greater cut. So my point is, we'll need to know what your position is on the tax levy limit as we move forward, and we'll need to know that fairly soon about what you think as we start to develop a plan if cuts are necessary. And again, there's probably no question that that's going to be something that we're going to have to discuss and deal with. So Is any questions on that?
I don't have a question, but do you want us to talk about it now or next
Oh.
meeting soon enough, or what's your thoughts?
That's entirely up to you. I just need that to, I mean, I want to recognize the fact that you've had, and I think it's clear that there's been some conversations and some concerns raised over the last, 10 months or so. I think probably not that long, but since last summer, that there's a sensitivity to these issues, and there's even a greater sensitivity given the pandemic circumstances. So it's entirely up to you. I just think that that at some point there has to be some discussion about what, is that the board's intention? Because I was getting that sense from the board, but I think we need to know, formally from you if that's the case.
Okay, so would a discussion next meeting about that be soon enough?
That would be fine.
Okay. We'll have to put that on the agenda then. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the 3-year
Michael?
projection. Oh, sorry.
Could I just
Am I good?
add one thing
Oh,
to that?
yes. Sure.
Quickly? Just as the board members begin to think about this for the next meeting, I just want to make sure that I understand one particular aspect of the fund balance. You said that a question was raised about using the fund balance in order to keep the levy increase down.
Yes.
My understanding is that the state or somebody instituted limits on the amount of fund balance. I believe it's 4% or something that we can carry. And the reasoning behind that is so that we know that we're not, quote unquote, overtaxing the constituency. Like by maintaining that level, you're maintaining a fund balance that can support things like a pandemic or a capital project that didn't pass, and now we have a roof that's leaking and pouring into the building. Or, I mean, that's what a fund balance is for, these emergencies. So if we use our fund balance for a one-time thing to keep tax rates down, are we really shooting ourselves in the foot? Because you've always kept that fund balance at a mandated percentage and never had more than that. More than that would indicate that we are not, that we're undercharging, overcharging taxes. That's what it is, overcharging taxes. So I just think that we need to keep that in mind as we go forward in our thinking.
Right.
That's all. And if I'm wrong, I wanted you to correct that, because that's
No.
how I've always been understood it when you were explaining it to us, is that we try to, I should say, try to keep it, or you do keep it within that range so that we're not overtaxing.
Correct. And
Okay.
and you're right. And I apologize if I'm making this a little seem like a simple, okay, so do you want to have a 0% tax increase, or halfway to the cap or something like that? But why it really matters, and you make a good point, Ann, is that because we will need to understand, as we talk about what's the long-term plan, if we say, okay, well, we will not, let me just, as an example, okay, we're going to do a 0% tax increase. And let's just say the cap would have been 2%. So about $650,000. So we're going to forego a tax increase of $650,000, but we don't want to cut an additional $650,000 of program. So let's backfill that with fund balance. So that's why we would need to know what your sort of feeling is on the tax, zero tax or less than the cap, because then we need to craft a plan for what happens, how long will fund balance and reserves last if we're utilizing them to backfill, and not if we're not cutting programs. So there's a lot of decisions that have to be made as we go through this process. But understanding like what your feeling is on a tax levy increase is really an important part of it, because it's always been our practice. I won't say my assumption, but it's always been our practice that, are you still there? Oops, I'm losing my power. That our practice has been to go to the limit. And if that's not going to be the case, I just want to make sure that we are planning appropriately for that.
If I remember,
I wouldn't want to wait. It would really put us in a tough spot if we waited until March or April and suddenly then we say, well, hey, here's our prioritized list of things that we want to present to you, board, about cutting. And then if you said, well, yeah, but and by the way, we don't count on that 650 because $650,000 because we think that we should do a zero this year, or just do half of that. That then it puts us in a challenging position then in developing the budget.
if I remember the discussion, it also involved putting monies in sub-reserve accounts.
Yes.
That tie up the money for only those specific purposes.
Right.
And I think one of the points raised was that would there have been any more flexible accounts to put those funds in, knowing that we're going to have a significant shortfall, at least in terms of state aid. And so I think that the conversation, rightly so, what you just said about simplifying it is a little more complex than that.
Yep. Yeah. The two reserves that that we've used to, allocate funding to help us in the future is the Employees Retirement System Reserve and the Teachers Retirement System Reserve, which we're allowed to use to offset those expenses, which obviously occur every year, with TRS increasing a little bit. So this year, as a percentage for the employer contribution rate, we're going to see an increase there. So being able to use, they're actually two of the most easily accessible because they don't require public approval to put the money in or take the money out. Just board actions and through the budget process. So that's good in that respect. And we'll always have ERS and TRS expenses each year. So they're definitely, there's quite a bit of flexibility in being able to use those.
So we can use those for other purposes other than what the sub-account title is?
Well, you can use those to offset those expenses. I mean, we have
Just
a
those
$2 million,
expenses.
a $2 million teachers
that's
retirement system bill. So it's just a straight offset of that. So yeah, there's not an issue. And ERS, I can't remember. It's over $1 million. We can't remember exactly. So not an issue utilizing those funds.
Just for those specific purposes.
Correct. Yep.
If you listen to the State of the State address today, there were really no specifics, but what the governor's basic message was that he's relying heavily on the federal government to bail out states because of the limited funding that they've received.
We're in trouble.
So it could go really in any direction.
Yep.
And it's, again, a very challenging time. You almost need a crystal ball to put together a budget and prepare where you're going to go with it.
Right. Yes. He made a comment today about, and he was talking sort of in generalities about how do you fill what he's saying is a $15 billion budget gap. And he talked about various, if we didn't increase if we did a freeze on public employee unions, state public employee unions, it was X dollars. But when he talked about public schools, he said a 20% decrease in public school state aid would equal $5 billion. I think it was $5.2 billion. So that was an interesting number, because if I look back, the year 12-13, there was $1.5 billion cut from the education budget that year. And our gap elimination adjustment, for that year was over $3 million. So ours was $3 million cut when the school district state aid was cut $1.54 billion. So that gives you sort of a little relative, perspective on, it's a 20% decrease. I mean, that would be catastrophic. I mean, a 1.5 billion that cost us $3 million was catastrophic. I pray we're not back to something like that. So, well, I guess you're right, Peter. When these decisions get made, I mean, the state budget's due by March 31st, April 1st. And we need to know by probably the, third week in April, what our state aid is going to look like. So yeah, there's some interesting timelines that don't align very well. We'll see. That's why I'm thinking that we've got to be prepared for the potential for the likelihood of some sort of cuts.
Mike, what's the percent increase with, and you probably already said this, with the 650 and tax levy increase? What does that come to in terms of?
Well, we don't have all the information yet for the to do the actual tax, the tax cap, the tax levy cap calc. I haven't done that yet, but I was just using 2%. So 2% is $650,000.
Okay.
It's been, on average, it's been 2.5%.
2% is 650. Okay.
Yep.
So Michael, I think as we're all kind of working through this, as you've done in the past for us, I think having scenarios is going to be helpful, almost as if saying, all right, board, if you consider a 0, here's what you do. If you consider 1%, if you consider 2%, because I think as much as we would like to be able to give you an informed decision, I think we're all still learning. And like you said, this timeline is going to be a challenging one for everyone, just because, by the time the state puts their information together, the feds aren't going to free up any money anytime soon. Even with the change in administration, it's going to take some time. So I think, honestly, we can certainly all think through it in time to be able to discuss at the next meeting. But I have a feeling we'll have to kind of consider some different scenarios just so that we can kind of wrap our heads around this a little bit more.
Yep. Sounds good.
I think we can kind of assume certain things based on prior experience. And so if you could kind of develop for us, Mike, the worst case scenario, because we know that, when it comes down to cutting anything and cutting education, he cuts education. So, and I'm certainly not holding my breath on federal assistance. So, and we also can definitely function on the fact that the community at large does not have the stomach for any measure of tax increase considering recent events. So I kind of need, this is the worst possible case scenario of what we're doing. And then also to Ann's point, if we use that fund balance, taking different approaches to try and preserve the continuity of programs, but then do we, in the long run, hurt ourselves? Those are kind of my questions currently before I can make a decision.
Yeah,
But-
you're right. You're right. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just gonna repeat something you said earlier, Michael. Keep in mind that you said status quo is $1.5 million, just rollover contracts. Isn't that what you said earlier?
Well, yeah,
And-
contracts and other.
Right,
Yeah, and other,
and 1% is 650. So even at 2%, we're not at $1.5 million.
yeah.
So that's kind of the litmus test a little bit.
Right, and I'm trying, and that I was using those too, to just so you have a little perspective on even at a break even, the challenge that we're, but when I say break even, no state aid increase, no state aid decrease, the challenge that we're going to have even there, at that level.
I agree. I'm picking up on your concern. Yes.
Yeah, and two, we have to, hopefully we'll get a sense. It's hard to know, right? See the difference. What happened in the last fiscal crisis? Chris, you'll laugh because we always kind of chuckled, not after the fact. There's no laughing during the fact, but we'd always say, right, Chris, the one-time GEA, right? That was. I know Chris said that a lot of times, the one time, because when Governor Patterson was in place, that's what he said. We just need this one-time adjustment. And the one-time adjustment went on for, I think, 6 years in total. And it was like $14 million that we had cut from the district. And what we did, and early on, we heard one-time adjustment, and they hit us for whatever it was, $1.5 million or $2 million. And we did utilize all the reserves and fund balance we had because we were, desperately trying to maintain the program. The problem with that is it didn't last 1 year. So now there's a cliff, and now there's no more backfilling that money that you've already used up. It's gone, and now you're left with the budget that's at a level that's not sustainable. And at the same time, they're still reducing state aid. The gap elimination adjustments got higher, and then they got lower. Near the end, there was some restorations, but that's the challenge of, you can say, yeah, you know what, we'll use whatever we have to stave off any of these problems for 21, 22, and hopefully the New York economy recovers, the underlying conditions. The one good thing about this situation is we were in the last financial crisis, it was a global economic meltdown that really caused some major problems financially in the state, but also it created pressure on the retirement system contributions because of the losses in the marketplace. And we saw some major bumps there. So it was like a double whammy. On one side, we were losing revenues, and the expenses for the retirement systems were going up significantly. Hopefully, I just can't see it being a magic 1 year recovery, but hopefully it won't stretch out as long as the financial crisis did in terms of the impact. But nobody has, like you said, Chris, the crystal ball. I don't know. So you just have to know that utilizing fund balance and reserves that you have, I don't want to say it serves a purpose in that first year, and maybe it carries over to another year because you are trying to get that group through and the next group through. But what it means is it makes it more painful for the ones after that, because then you really have to cut. I think there has to be more of a smoothing plan. And frankly, we were in a really bad financial situation because of the way we use so much fund balance. We knew what we were doing. It wasn't, not clear to us, the decisions we were making and why we were making them, but we were down to about $250,000 of fund balance. Now, here's the problem with this too. And, I'll just take this back to the project. We're in a pretty good financial position now, and bond interest rates that will be paid by the school district whenever hopefully a project gets passed are based on, in part, the financial condition of the school district, and having strong reserves and fund balance significantly factor into that. So if we do sort of use up and offset losses in state aid revenue with fund balance and reserves, it will weaken our financial position. We worked really hard to restore that. We had a negative outlook placed on us at one point by S&P. We finally got that off because we restored our financial position. But the lower your bond rating, the higher your interest is going to be. The cost of borrowing for the project is going to be higher. So that's something that there's a domino effect to all decisions that are made. But I guess if we go back to the initial, number one, we're trying to preserve a really good educational program for our students, and at the same time, like we say, try to be fiscally responsible. I guess we have to figure out how we're defining that in this budget cycle and in the long term. Okay. The next slides are really, we don't need to spend a lot of time. They're just the debt service. And why we always start with that as part of this discussion is because it's easy, because there's nothing that you can change there. It is what it is. It's the debt that we've incurred for our capital projects. There's 3 projects outstanding, XL1, XL2, and the project, the $19 million project from back in like 2000-ish. That's part of the budget that's easy. Oh, sorry, I'm losing my battery. I don't know why it's not charging. Sorry, having problems with my machine here. Says it's charging, not charging. Okay, let me try something else. But anyways, so you can, I think, get the gist of the debt service. The last part of it is, my iPad will not charge for some reason. All right, if you lose me, I'll get back on my phone or my computer. But anyways, it's just the debt service, and then the bus debt service. Again, I mentioned before, we have 5 series of debts that when one's paid off, we try to cycle the next one back on. It's really important that we maintain 5 active bus borrowings, because that way we're able to cycle our 70 buses that we have on a 10-year cycle. That's just the debt service for them. And then if you just go to the last page, Jim, it's really just, you know what, you know this information, because this is when the debt's getting paid off for the capital project borrowings that are outstanding. This is what we talked about trying to seamlessly bring in the next project at about the same time. So we'll have one paid off in 23 and one paid off in 24. And those are both projects that were, again, they were part of the merger incentive aid. So there's basically no local share in the budget for those. They're really all fully state aid funded for the most part. All right, questions? Yeah. I'm gonna have a fight with my iPad pretty soon here. All right.
The way technology works is the iPad is probably going to win.
It's just.
I can put it in the bag of rice with my phone.
So any questions on? Can you let me in, Jim?
You're here. I can see you.
Oh, there you go. I think if everyone has had a chance to look at this previously, if you have any questions now, if you have any questions in the future.
Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. As Michael has said in the past, like, feel free to contact him with your questions on the debt service information.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When I put the phone on, I was muted.
That's okay.
Maybe the presenter did that to me on purpose.
Could be.
Enough. We've heard enough out of you. All right.
No, I think we need to know it all, Michael. It's all good.
Away we go.
Off for another season. But yeah, I certainly don't want to live the the first 6 years on the board with those cuts where we ended up with 25% reduction in staff. That was horrible, horrible times. And if we can avoid that, I'm all for that.
Was that 2008 or
Uh-huh.
07? Yeah.
Yep. Chris, Peter, and I were all new to the board, and it was just baptism by fire. I think it was awful.
In addition to closing a school.
Yeah, in
Two
addition
schools.
to closing school.
2 schools.
Oh,
Two
right.
schools. That's right. 2 schools. Yep. So, but thank you for all that good information. I think it's important for us to think that through, and I'm glad you brought that to our attention, that we needed to give you some feedback, at least before, sooner than later, so we can get you that information so you can keep working and thinking and doing your budget magic that you do. All right. Does anybody have any other questions on this?
Do we know when the tax levy cap will be set?
Yeah, I'll be able to give you that information probably at the next board meeting.
And Michael, isn't there a mandate in terms of the level, like 4%, that we have to keep as the fund balance?
Well, we don't, that's the maximum we can go, we can go up to. There's no rule that says that that's what we have to have.
Okay.
Right. So that's, again, for cash flow purposes, we need to have some fund balance, because in the summertime and early fall, we don't have those till we start to collect taxes. We need to have revenue available for operating, payroll, everything. That's for unintended, or unanticipated expenditures. It's for maintaining a fiscal solvency, again, that relates to our position in terms of, future and potential borrowings and things like that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions in regards to that? All right, so now it's time for board member reports, and I am going to go in the order I see you guys on my screen. That means Doug goes first.
Oh, thank you. Well, we do have some challenges, not only with budget, but with the email tonight from a member of the public to develop communication with the public, two-way dialogue, hopefully, with the public during that whole budget process over the next few months. That'll be a real challenge for us. And I don't know how much technology we can use versus what other alternatives we have, but we really have to, I think about a plan that uses as much of the media as possible, and not just online media, maybe print media and other forms. I'm not quite sure, but I see some real challenges for us. And Lauren, you're going to be up for a pretty interesting time if you're attending the next couple of board meetings. So welcome. And we'll be glad to explain any of the terms that we're using to you to help you get through this process and understand it with us. Maybe you can give us some ideas. That's my report.
Yes, thank you. And so, Lauren, just so you know, each board member, even you are welcome to make any kind of comments or thoughts, deliver them at the end of the board meeting. That's this board member report. If you're interested in doing that tonight, you can have the floor. If not, you can pass for tonight, but and at any time you can pass, but just know that you are welcome to do that. So I'll give you the opportunity now if you would like it. If not, you can just say, I'll pass, and we'll talk about this again next time.
I'll pass. I'm new, but thank you.
Yes, understood. Thank you. Okay, Samantha.
I think by now that I would learn the keyboard mute. I mean, I guess, I don't know what other families are dealing with, but the chaos is just getting more and more ripe in our household. And so I just can't express my appreciation enough for the fact that there are adults in the district, like Jim and Mike and Mr. Gella and Ms. Kyer and Mr. Sips, and all of them who are keeping the train going down the tracks. Because if it was up to me, it would be it would have exploded a couple weeks ago. So it's certainly a challenging time, and I'm very, very grateful. And again, I think that the teachers are doing a fantastic job. And I just, it's going to be an interesting budget process. If we, I did appreciate the email from our resident. I'm going to keep this short because, like I said, chaos. Yeah, everybody just, stay safe. The more careful we are, the sooner we get out of this. So stay safe, be careful, take care of your people. That's all.
Thank you, Sam. Anne?
I already expressed a lot of what I was going to say in my board member reports, about missing Michael.
We're having trouble hearing you, Anne.
Oh, really?
Oh, there, that's better.
I just sat up straight. It's getting late. I just want to welcome you, Lauren. Hopefully I can understand what you're saying next time. We really do value your input. The student input helps us greatly understand what's going on from your perspective. And I found that last year, we really benefited from that. So don't be shy and tell us how you feel. And so welcome, and it's good to have you. And I think that's all I really have that I haven't already said. So thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Chris, you're up.
All right. Well, welcome, Lauren, as well. Look forward to working together here. Only other thing I would share with the group is I can speak firsthand on the COVID front, having a household that is all tested positive, that it's an interesting process. Thankfully, the kids are coming out of their time frame. I guess the two oldies in the house need a little bit more time to recuperate, I guess. I'm not sure, but we will be done with it by the end of this week, at least the contagious period. But it's a maddening, frustrating process where you may not exhibit every symptom, but at the same time, you don't feel right. And ultimately things kind of snowball, and all of a sudden you realize that you got to slow down a little bit. So I would just say to everyone, kind of like what Samantha was saying, be careful. It doesn't take much to catch it, that's for sure. And we'll continue to do the best that we can as a district to support the staff as well as the students that are working here so diligently. And it's great to have had, Laura and Dennis and Josh able to kind of share. I mean, I always appreciate hearing from those folks on the front line, because it makes our job a little bit easier to understand in terms of some of the stuff they've been working on the front lines with the staff. So I appreciate them sharing their insight and reassuring us that the elementary school kids are resilient and they'll continue to keep chugging along. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chris. Megan?
Thanks, Jesse. I also want to welcome Lauren and also Danielle, who's not with us tonight, but hopefully we'll get to meet her next time. Like Anne said, the input that the students provide us is invaluable. It gives us kind of puts a finger on the pulse of where the students are feeling, and we need that. So we welcome you to the group, and I can't wait to hear more from you. Looking forward to, I know OBP has some things coming up, Cabaret, there were some auditions, there's some buzz that they're going to be doing something virtually. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some more creative responses to not being able to get together with people. I want to thank Mr. Russell and also Mr. Matthews, who submitted community feedback on the last meeting. You know, we have entered this period in our society where we're not able to communicate with each other, and we're losing that. And I think what I've noticed, at least in the past couple of months, though, is that people have been more willing to step up and provide feedback and communicate with us, even if they don't agree with what we're doing. And I welcome that. I realize that we definitely have challenges. I agree with Doug on that. But I look to Mr. Russell's email as an opportunity to open those lines of communication and really get to know the community better and have them get to know us better, and be able to deliver more of what they're looking for, because you have to speak up. Otherwise, we don't know. So I appreciate the feedback. Please keep it coming to all members of the community. If you have an idea or something that you want to share, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are open to, you know, all types of civil discourse. Please let us know what you're thinking. To everyone, you know, Chris, to your family and to all the other families who are ill or affected by COVID, we're thinking of you and hoping that you come out on the other side. And to the students, you know, the ones that are killing it and the ones that are struggling, we're thinking about you too. And we're, you know, please don't be afraid to reach out to your building administrators or your teachers if you need help, or if you would like to express something that you think would work better, or if you need assistance or emotional help or something like that, please reach out to an adult in the area. Don't be afraid to speak up so someone can help you. We're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Peter?
Hi, Lauren. Nice to have you on board. I just want to comment about, again, the extraordinary efforts that administration, staff, and faculty have been putting into keeping the district going during these very challenging times. And I think especially Jim and our directors of student health, who pretty much work 24/7 on this over and above their contractual, the demands of them have far exceeded their contracts. And I know that they're all dedicated to the district, and I just wanted to share that does not go unnoticed and unappreciated. It's a Herculean effort these days, and hopefully when all this calms down, you'll get a break. So take care, be well. Those are my comments.
Yes, so welcome, Lauren, and I wholeheartedly agree with everyone's appreciation to all my fellow board members' appreciation to all the administration and all the people who are working so hard to do the best thing for our students and our faculty and staff and all the district, the district as a whole. So hopefully everyone can do their part to stay healthy and safe. And as somebody mentioned earlier, we can come out on the other side sooner. So thank you for that. We are now at a point where we are moving into executive session. We have executive session for matters leading to the appointment, employment, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Do I have a motion? And we will not have need to come back out into public session, I do not believe, correct? Okay, so do I have a motion to move into executive session? Peter, thank you.
Doug seconded. He raised his hand.
Did he? All right. I can't look at everybody at the same time.
I'm
So
letting you
Peter
have that,
and
Doug. I'm letting you have that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, we will move into executive session, and I think we can excuse Lauren. You've suffered through enough tonight. And thank you very much for joining us. And didn't quite catch what she said, but thank you. And then
Jesse, I just texted Matt, his laptop died.
Oh.
So we need him. He's powering up now.
Okay.
To be on to stop the recording before you start an executive session conversation.
All right, thank you. And it looks like Linda signed off also,
Linda's
correct?
off, so we
Okay.
should down to board and cabinet for executive session.
Okay. All right. So we will just hold for the minute while we wait,
Yeah.
because he's the only one who has the power to do that, correct?
He's the only one who safely knows how to do that. Don't put it that way.
Oh. Oh, here he comes. Guess we all need to hardwire our power supply for these meetings for budget season.
Dan wanted to give me a laptop for Christmas. And I said, Dan, when all this is over, I'm never going to use a laptop. And because I've been using everybody else's, as you know. So he gives me a laptop for Christmas. And I too, Chris, had it over the